Hello and good evening. I'm Don Arleth and welcome to our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. During Monday's massive Russian airstrike, which targeted multiple regions in Ukraine, including areas close to the Polish border, Polish radar stations detected an object crossing into Polish airspace. The object disappeared after traveling 25 kilometers into Poland. That's coming up in just a minute, but before we do that, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Belarusian forces have amassed in southeastern Belarus, right next to the border with Ukraine. 33 years ago, Moldova returned to the free world after decades of Soviet tyranny. And the number of COVID-19 cases in Poland is on the rise once again. At least 5 deaths have been reported in Ukraine after Putin's troops conducted a massive, large-scale missile and drone attack across the country. The deadliest strikes have already hit Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, and Lutsk, located just 90 kilometers from the border with Poland.
In the early hours of the morning, Kyiv's residents were forced to seek shelter underground. Yet again, several explosions were heard in the capital, awakening its residents. Air raid alarms blared as Russia conducted massive attacks all across Ukraine, including in Lviv, which neighbors Poland, and Lutsk, which is located just an hour away from the border.
There is nothing left. It was razed to the ground. You can see the crater over there, and here is what's left of the house and the barn where I stored my equipment.
The attacks were not without casualties. At least 4 people died and many more were wounded.
It was one of the largest strikes, a combined one. More than 100 missiles of various types and about 100 Shaheeds. And like most previous Russian strikes, this one was just as vile.
The effects of the attack were felt outside Ukraine's borders too. Poland and regional allies scrambled aircraft after an unidentified object launched from Russian soil entered Polish airspace. It likely still remains in Poland.
The object entered Polish airspace near the Ukrainian city of Chervonohrad, where a nearby power plant has been repeatedly targeted by Russia. The object likely violated Polish airspace and then disappeared from our screens.
Another devastating attack took place in Kramatorsk in Ukraine's east over the weekend. Russian missiles unexpectedly rained down on a hotel in the region.
We were getting ready to go to bed. Then suddenly, our windows were blown out. Our door fell to the ground and the glass shattered. All that's left is pieces of glass and rubble.
I had the door and window open, and I felt a wave around 20 past 12. That's it. There was no damage, nothing, thank God.
A British citizen, Reuters safety advisor Ryan Evans, was killed in the attack. 2 others Reuters journalists were wounded. Kramatorsk Mayor Alexander Honcharenko confirmed Evans' death, saying that rescuers found his body under the rubble. The attack took place on the same day as the Ukrainian Independence Day celebrations.
And now we're moving live to Kyiv, where our correspondent Oz Chatterjee has more insight on today's events. Hello, Oz. Looks like widespread panic across Ukraine, many people seeking shelter. What can you tell us about the latest after these attacks across the country?
Sure. I mean, it was one of the largest since the war began. We know that it was 127 missiles were fired by Russia, and over 109 drones were fired across the country. The air raid lasted for about 8 hours before it cleared, which meant that many people, particularly here in Kyiv, were sheltering in basements. And so on. We know that one of the targets today in Kyiv, in the Kyiv region, was the Kyiv hydroelectric power plant, which sustained some damage. Now, that is also home to a dam. And if that dam had broken, it would have caused widespread devastation in the Kyiv region. It's unlikely that the missiles Russia fired would have been able to do significant damage towards that. But it still shows that the kinds of places that Russia is targeting are very, very dangerous to life. Now, we also know that there have been rolling blackouts across the country, including here in Kyiv. Zelensky has spoken within the last few hours to say that work is continuing and will continue around the clock, he says, to restore power for the rest of the country. Again, it should be stressed the size of this attack. 15 of Ukraine's 24 oblasts were targeted in Russian strikes today. So a very, very large attack that targeted most of the country. And now, reports that these missiles and drones are coming into the territories of other countries too. So at a very dangerous situation here in Ukraine, while the Russians still push in the east of the country, causing huge losses there in the Pokrovsk region.
Oz Chatterjee reporting for us there live from Kyiv. Thank you very much for that, sir, and do keep yourself safe. Kyiv has issued a warning to Belarus over the concentration of military personnel and equipment near the shared border. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has expressed concern over these developments and these deployments, while Belarus maintains that these are just exercises.
Belarusian forces, including special operations units and former Wagner Group fighters, have amassed in the country's southeast, just near the border with Ukraine. The region is also home to the disaster-hit Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Gomel region. Ukraine has expressed concerns over the strategic location of these deployments and vowed retaliation should Belarus attack.
Ukraine warns that if Belarus violates the state border of Ukraine, all troop concentrations, military facilities and supply routes on the territory of Belarus will become legal targets for the Ukrainian armed forces. At least 17 potential targets are indicated.
The latest reports by Ukraine's foreign ministry show around 1,100 Belarusian soldiers situated near the border. It also points out that carrying out any military exercises there poses a serious threat to Ukraine's national security. Each day, Ukrainian troops patrol the border with Belarus, both on the water and in the air.
The way I see it, they're afraid of us. When they see our boats on the river, they scramble and try to hide and return to shore. But not us. We keep patrolling.
The escalation of tensions came after Lukashenko accused Ukraine of aggression and of sending over 100,000 troops to the border in mid-August, a claim which has since been refuted by Kyiv.
On August 27, 1991, Moldova returned to the free world after decades of Soviet tyranny. In light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the nation's Independence Day has taken on an even more significant role. Our reporter Sasha Farbach is in Chisinau and has this next report.
Now, 33 years ago, on Tuesday, a very special day for Moldova, celebrating its Independence Day from the Soviet Union. Now, what is traditionally a day where Moldovans enjoy that freedom once again has become even more important as the country has moved closer to Europe with those accession talks now beginning in June. And that is a very important moment for this country to rejoin that European nations, that European family. Now, the Moldovans will not be celebrating alone. There'll be special guests here on Tuesday, including the presidents of the Baltic states, so from Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, also here to mark the special day. I think that's very significant indeed. And with the war in Ukraine next door, on the doorstep of this nation, that's become even more important as this country holds firm against any kind of disinformation by the Kremlin. There's a referendum planned here at the end of October, which also solidify that position, moving closer to Europe. And we'll have very important speeches here by the Prime Minister on this occasion at this main square here behind me. So it's an important day for Moldova, but also increasingly also for Europe. That's Sasha Farbach for TVP World in Chisinau, Moldova.
And just right after the news, stay with us because Sasha Farbach has an exclusive interview with Moldovan Prime Minister Dorin Rechan. So stay with us. The Bulgarian president has announced the country is heading for yet another election, which will be held on October 27th. This will mark the 7th election in Bulgaria in the last 3 years.
Bulgaria's political turmoil continues. After three parties consecutively failed to form a government following the June the 6th parliamentary election, the country's head of state said today that Bulgaria will see a new caretaker prime minister who will be in office until the election in late October.
In accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, tomorrow morning I will issue a decree for the appointment of the government proposed by you, and I expect it to take the oath on the same day. Tomorrow I will also issue a decree for the holding of preliminary parliamentary elections on October 27th.
The current caretaker Prime Minister Dimitar Glavchev, who has served in this capacity since early April, will remain in his role.
Improving the lives of Bulgarian citizens, this should be our top priority, regardless of the fact that we are a caretaker government. The state cannot remain on pause. Work must also be done to ensure that the Bulgarian citizens live better. And with our fellow ministers, we will make every effort to accomplish that.
The legislative intricacies of Bulgarian politics aside, the previous coalition failed because many political groups were driven by the aim to underscore their distinctiveness, says Bulgarian politics expert Marian Sabev.
We are finding ourselves in a spiral of political populism, which is not leading us anywhere. And it will take much courage and enormous level of professionalism and integrity within a political party and a leader to lead us out of this wrongful path.
The turmoil led to a situation when parties in the country did not seem to be interested in closing ranks under one government.
They have achieved conditions in which they could create a functioning government, and then it appeared. This is actually not a goal for these parties. They have learned how to rule without the need to create a government.
Bulgaria ranks as low as 81st in the global happiness ranking, by far the lowest of all EU countries. It's also the poorest country in the bloc, blighted by all-pervasive corruption. Many Bulgarians seem to have abandoned the hope that they will see some political stability. In the last election, the voter turnout stood at a humble 33%, the lowest since 1989.
More than half of Poles do not believe in their country's readiness to handle another epidemic. Although voters of the ruling coalition have more faith in the government, those with negative sentiment remain the majority. The number of cases of COVID-19 in Poland is on the rise yet again.
This is how Poland's Supreme Audit Office assessed the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic by the government.
The authorities did not declare a state of emergency, but instead, through the COVID emergency bill, made changes to the regulations, based on which even more far-reaching restrictions, bans and orders were imposed.
It is something many Poles still remember vividly. COVID restrictions were easily overthrown by courts.
There were a lot of concerns raised about the COVID emergency law, about its form. It should be understood that this legislation did some of its job at the time, but was not at all perfect.
Today, Poles have no illusions. 52% of those surveyed believe that Poland is not sufficiently prepared for the outbreak of a next epidemic. The opposite view was held by 28% of respondents. The genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus is being monitored by Warsaw's wastewater treatment facilities. Large hikes could be observed in August. But what Dr. Ernest Kuchar of the Warsaw Medical University tells me is that another COVID pandemic is not likely.
95% of the population has antibodies. We assume that 2/3 of the population has gone through COVID, so has natural immunity, even if they refused to get vaccinated.
COVID is not the only disease that can cause epidemics. About 100 new cases of the new Mpox strain are being reported in Europe each month. The virus has caused an epidemic in Central Africa.
Poland's national public prosecutor is searching for the former director of the government agency for strategic reserves, the institution responsible for procuring ventilators and masks during the COVID pandemic. He's suspected of abusing his position for criminal purposes, and he has possibly fled the country.
The prosecutor has issued an arrest warrant for Michał Kuczmierowski, the former director of the Government Agency for Strategic Reserves.
More than €1 billion will be allocated in Poland's 2025 budget for the development of a nuclear power plant, the Polish finance minister revealed on Sunday. Let's take a look at the latest developments for Poland's first nuclear energy project.
Poland needs both renewable and nuclear energy to reduce the cost of electricity, Polish Finance Minister Andrzej Domański said at the Youth Center event on Sunday. Domański also revealed that the government plans to allocate more than €1 billion for the construction of a nuclear power plant. The nuclear plant will be located at Lubiatowo-Kopalino in the Pomerania region by the Baltic Sea. It will be equipped with an AP1000 reactors from the American company Westinghouse. Andrzej Strupczewski, the spokesperson for the National Center for Nuclear Research and one of the scientists responsible for the launch of Poland's only working nuclear reactor, explains that the money earmarked in the 2025 budget will most likely be used on preparatory tasks needed to be completed before the construction begins.
The construction of accessory buildings and the completion of geological surveys necessary to replace the soil before the reactor is built are the main tasks for the near future. At the same time, the design plan for the reactor must be adjusted. The current design plan was created for American conditions, which means a different frequency of electricity and therefore a different power supply for the reactor pumps.
The first reactor was initially expected to be commissioned in 2033. Now construction is scheduled to begin in 2028, with the entire project expected to be completed by 2035. The plant is part of Poland's broader effort to decarbonize its economy and ensure a stable supply of emission-free electricity.
In France, the domestic political crisis has risen to the top of the agenda after a break to host the Paris Olympics. President Macron has held talks with the far-right National Rally as he seeks to unblock the deadlock caused by July's inconclusive snap parliamentary elections. But here's a spoiler alert. There appears to be no solution in sight.
Far-right National Rally leaders Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella emerged from talks with the French president. Macron's searching for an understanding on the name of the next prime minister to end deadlock caused by inconclusive snap elections that he called. Bardella said they would oppose a left-wing government.
We will make sure that our voters are heard and respected, but also defend the country from a government that will divide the French society.
No grouping emerged from the snap election with a majority, with the vote equally split between the left-wing New Popular Front, Macron's centrist bloc and the National Rally. Experts say Macron may look to expand his political base.
I'm thinking his idea is to have a centrist government with some element enlarged to traditional left and traditional right.
Macron has served as president since 2017 and faced crises before. Analysts say he's an accomplished politician.
He is a master of game. It will be himself who will decide who will be the next French prime minister.
Whoever Macron names as prime minister will face a tough job, and whether they can get a hung parliament to back any reforms is still a very much open question.
As Independence Day in Moldova is marked on August 27th, it's important to keep in mind that its freedom is important not just to the nation itself, but to all of Europe. As a staunch supporter of Ukraine and as a nation moving towards the European Union, Moldova has some very serious ambitions. In an exclusive interview with Prime Minister Dorin Rechan, our reporter Sasha Farbach spoke about the struggles, dangers, and opportunities facing the country.
Now, Moldova's ambitions are with Europe. That is something very clear. It's setting the tone. What's going on in Ukraine as well matters here in Moldova. Now to talk more about that journey of Moldova into that European family is the Prime Minister of Moldova, Mr. Dorin Rechan, who joins me now. Thank you, Prime Minister, for taking the time with us. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with the importance of Independence Day, those 33 years ago. Why does that matter so much for Moldova and for the wider region today?
Look, under Soviet occupations, Moldovans have been constrained from their true meaning and true willing to be part of the free world. This process started back in '89, and in '91 we obtained independence from the Soviet occupation. And this is a moment where we Moldovans are celebrating our determination to be part of the free world.
And also, you're not celebrating alone. You have 3 Baltic presidents also here on this occasion. Do you sense a certain type of affinity? Is there a closer relationship with those countries than, let's say, other countries in the West? Or why does that connection matter?
Look, back then, starting in the late 80s, this was the 3 Baltic countries, us, and Ukraine, that started to voice our willingness to get out of the Soviet occupation. And Moldova actually was the first back in 1990 to recognize Lithuania's independence. So we are closely connected by those events. It's true that the Baltic countries advanced for some reasons much faster than us, and now we're very happy to learn from their experience how to develop our country and how to build a prosperous future for Moldovans here.
Mm-hmm. There's also, I want to ask about that Polish connection. I mean, very much Joseph Pilsudski was here in this part of the world, in Moldova, in 1932, very much speaking on your behalf. Mr. Tusk, Prime Minister Donald Tusk, is going to be arriving here in the next few days. What can we expect from that? How has that Polish connection, relationship helped you in Europe?
Poland is a great supporter of ours, and Ukraine, who is now fighting for the peace and security in Moldova, but also in the Baltic countries. And we are grateful to Poles for the support, not only in political terms for Moldova, to go forward with the European integration project, but also for the many great exchanges that we have at the social level, but also in terms of business and economics.
Okay. And also looking at that road into Europe, it's a long road, many chapters of EU accession, but that's well on in earnest now. But looking at some concerns of Moldova's journey, we're looking at Transnistria, for instance, we're looking at Gagauzia. How difficult and how challenging are those regions in Moldova's journey into the European Union?
Transnistria is very much aligned right now. Us and together with Kiev, we align the region to our peace and security objectives. Moreover, we are designing policies to increase the social and economic exchanges between the mainland Moldova and the Transnistrian region. We already are witnessing a trade over 80% of Transnistria region with European Union. In Gagauzia, the only challenge is for the law enforcement, for the justice reform to do its job. Otherwise, we have very good relationship among different nationalities that live in Moldova, being that Bulgarians, Gagauz, Moldovans, Ukrainians, Poles, for that matter, or Jews.
Mm-hmm. But it does make one wonder. Recently, I think some months ago, the head of Gagauzia, she was meeting with Putin. There's a picture there, expressed a close cooperation that looks concerning. Are you not worried about that causing a destabilizing force in Moldova?
Russia tried to weaponize various scenarios here, including this latest element of using disinformation, political corruption, so that they saw a hatred between different parts of our countries, but it won't succeed. Moldova developed its resilience to this kind of attacks, and we are looking forward to build a resilient and a united country around our objective, EU integration.
Mm-hmm. And also looking further, there's a security pact and defense cooperation with the European Union that was signed in May. Also shortly before that, the French have also made a defense cooperation agreement with you, training possibly Moldovan security forces. If you look at your constitution as well, right now I believe it's Article 11. It prevents you from proclaiming your anything but neutrality. Is this a road potentially into NATO?
Look, neutrality is a foreign policy instrument, but that doesn't mean that we should not consolidate our defense capability. And this is what we are doing right now, making more investment into our defenses. We are also understanding our responsibility for regional defense. And today, when Ukraine is very much into making us peaceful and secure by fighting Russians on their own territory, we understand that we have to protect ourselves, but also EU borders with our defense capabilities.
Mm-hmm. And with the succession process, as you said, Moldova remaining resilient, do you expect any more support, financial support, or instruments that you could use to, as you said, keep yourself safe from any type of Russian disinformation or anything else?
We are increasing our collaboration with the EU member state, with NATO member states, so that we consolidate our defense capabilities, but also societal resilience. And correspondingly, we are also investing more as a share of GDP into our defense capabilities. We are also explaining to our people what neutrality is and what neutrality is not, and how defense is a value for the economic development and prosperity of people here.
Mm-hmm. Also, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was here recently. Given what's happening in Ukraine, as you alluded to, is there more of a sense, an urgency to help and support Moldova than some years ago, and how long can that last?
I think it is very important right now to support the region, for Germany, for Poland, to support Ukraine, but also to support Moldova through economic development and economic exchanges between businesses in our countries. We witness an increase of interest from the Polish businesses, and we would like to welcome them here. Also, Poles to come here to visit Moldova, to see our wonderful wineries, and to have a touristic experience that is rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at this point in time, if we're looking at GDP, though, it's still very much at the bottom of European economies. So what's your plan in terms of changing that right now, moving forward and making sure that Moldova increases in its wealth?
Right now, we are allocating investments for energy, for infrastructure, and this will enable foreign investors to come here and to do business. Moldova is already achieving a great success in terms of wines and IT. Currently, we have the highest share of IT employees as a percentage of total number of people. We witness an exponential growth of this sector, and correspondingly we are building on this experience to stimulate investment into higher productivity and correspondingly higher GDP.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so commendable goals, but nevertheless you have a very important date coming. October 20th is both presidential elections here in Moldova as well as that referendum on
Right.
the EU, so that's critical. How concerned are you and how concerned is your administration against any interference by Russian hybrid attacks? Is that something that you worry about?
We are seeing an escalation, actually, of the Russian interference through disinformation, through trying to organize protests, through trying to buy out votes. In other words, trying to politically corrupt people to vote against the referendum. Also, we see a lot of disinformation that is targeting, inducing hatred among different parts of the society in Moldova, and we are working hard right now to face all these challenges, but also to talk to the people, to explain to the people what are the benefits of being part of the large peaceful family of the European Union, and our target is to have a majority, a strong and powerful majority yes vote, as to consolidate the society around these developmental goals.
Mm-hmm. Prime Minister, you said it's also about explaining to the people the benefits of European Union membership on that road. Some in your nation are primarily Russian speakers, I think about 11%. Is your message when you reach those parts of the population that harder there? What are you doing to reach out to the Russian speakers?
We are talking to all Moldovans, and obviously some of the Some of the people are more skeptical, some of them are more exposed to the Russian or pro-Russian propaganda, but we make sure that we talk to every single person so that we explain it to what is the role of Moldova within EU, what is the role of EU for Moldova, and how we together can be a large European family. And what is very important is to understand this philosophy that a larger Europe means a more peaceful and more prosperous Europe.
Okay, so there's still a long road ahead, but I think it's very much on the right track. Prime Minister Donjan, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That's Sasha Farbach from the capital of Moldova, Chisinau, for TVP World.
And that was Sasha Farbach and Dorin Rechan, the Moldovan Prime Minister, on the eve of Moldovan Independence Day. Well, that's all from us tonight here on World News Tonight. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Good night.